Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another beautiful video on this beautiful channel on this beautiful day. How you guys and girls doing? Check out the description box, all that stuff, nice links, Twitter, Discord support page. Also drop a like, subscribe if you like the content as always. So here we go, beautiful game, beautiful day. We worked on the entity class a little bit right here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna create a player class. So I'm just gonna add a new class, a CPP class like this, and I'm just gonna call it player. And I'm gonna stop hitting my mic, I promise. This might sound a little bit, let me just move it up a little bit so I don't hit it. There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna call it player, virtual destructor, entity, all right, as a base class. The access is gonna be public, and just go ahead and create that class right here. So we have our entity inheritance, and then I'm just going to do the old school if and def player dot or h define player h and if. Okay, boom. All right, so there you go. Now I did the old school kind of include thing right there, include guard or whatever you want to call it. Just like I did an entity. So what we're gonna do is in the constructor, pretty much we're gonna use the entity class to create the player class. Okay. Functions, and we're gonna have a private section here with initializer functions. And then variables. All right. Now the player is probably going to have HP and all that beautiful stuff. We'll work on player as we go along. We still have a lot of engine stuff to figure out and everything. But initializer functions. What I'm going to do is void init variables, void init components. That's what I'm going to create. Okay. Now, once you create components, I probably don't want to be able to create an entity itself. So I'm thinking about making entity a abstract class, but we'll look into that later on. For now, we'll be able to create entities. So here we go. We have two functions to define. Define that, and then go to the folder. Initializer functions. And then we're gonna have constructors, destructors, okay? And here, I don't have any variables in there right now, but init components. So this creates sprite, and then we're gonna use a texture, okay? And for this, what I wanna do, now I'm thinking if this will be better in the constructor directly, but you know what, we'll do this. SF texture, pointer texture. Okay, probably we'll want a position as well. So float float x, float y, like that. And then a texture. So very simple player class. Nothing very special. Like this. And we're going to player.h and just put that in there. Boom. Easy peasy. And player is pretty much gonna be able to have a nice position. So yeah, I'm thinking we'll leave this for now. I'm just gonna do create sprite in here. X, Y, texture. Okay. No, wait, this isn't how it should be. There we go. Create sprite. Actually, if we're going to entity.h here, we could set a position here as well. Let's see. Virtual void set position. Const float x, const float y. So we'll be able to set the position. We'll define this in entity. Like this, entity. set position. We'll say, put that into functions. Just copy this. We go set position to X and Y. So X and Y. Boom. So if we have a sprite, we can set its position. Pretty much. Because anything that anything that a sprite can do, we want to be able to do. So if there exists a sprite, we should be able to move it and set positions to it. So basically that's how this is going to work. And then we can have a boolean or something where if you don't want a certain thing to be able to be moved and all that, but we'll figure that out. It's not that important. The most important part is that we can either have a sprite or not for an entity. Sometimes you might not want one and all that stuff. So it kind of makes it a little more dynamic. So you create the sprite, and then this set position X and Y. Okay, no problems there. So you create a sprite, you set the position, and there you go. So that should be it. Now you have the render function in here, so you don't need to do anything special in player. Player doesn't really have anything on its own right now anyway. But I'm probably gonna call this, before I forget, this init variables, this init components. Pretty much I'm just gonna do that. And that should pretty much be fine. That should be fine. But before we go on, yeah, they're virtual. Okay, so that's cool. So you can override them. That's perfect. You can override all of these, and that's nice. All right, so let's try this out. Now, I'm just gonna use a sprite that I own myself. I'm just gonna go into my hard drive where I keep it. I should have done this before. I'm sorry. I actually have some licensed stuff that I bought. I'm just gonna choose anything. I'm just choose a knight, whatever, idle, some dude, like whatever. I'll just use this. Copy that. Go back into our folder. Go into SFML RPG. Here you should have all your stuff, right? Resources, images, backgrounds, sprites, and then I'm probably gonna make another folder for player. Okay, I'm just gonna paste that in there, and I'm gonna call it test.png, because we're not gonna use this character, obviously. This is for some other stuff. So resources, images, sprites, player, test. Okay. All right, cool. And when we create the player, that probably happens in game state right here. In game state. Cool, so we're actually moving forward in here. I'm gonna close down entity for now. We'll just keep player open for now. So I'm gonna go into gamestate.cpp, gamestate.h. And as you can see in state.h, we do have a resource vector for textures. Okay, now I probably don't want a vector for this. Probably want a map, because then we can give keys to these, say what is what, right? So let's change this to std map, std map, std string, and then a texture. Okay, perfect. So you go. So when we create a map with a key, we can obviously give it a name and a texture. So let's go ahead into where is it? Gamestate.cpp. It is init keybinds. Probably gonna do void init textures right there. Okay. And we want to define this. I'm sorry if I'm going a little fast. I'm going to try to slow down. Here we are. So we just created this in gamestate.cpp right here. Okay. And these are our initializer functions. Okay. And this is our constructors and all that. Constructors/destructors. There you go. So now we have a init textures function. And in state.h, we change this from a vector to a map. Okay, so that's pretty much what we did. Now I'm gonna initialize a texture here. So this textures at position player idle, maybe something like that, equals SF texture from, let's see if we can actually copy sure the load from file. Let's see if we can do this. Resources, images, sprites, player, test.png. I'm pretty sure that's the whole thing. Let's see. Okay, SFML resources, images, sprites, player, test.png. Okay, perfect. So let's see if it can push that in. Operand types are SF texture equals boolean. This isn't. Oh, this is the boolean. Oh, I see what it's doing. So we'll just copy this and we'll paste that and we'll say SF texture temp, and then we'll say like this, temp load from file, and then temp. There we go, and just close that down, and this should be fine. So we'll add temp to that position. Loaded that in. So let's just assume that is loaded, and then we'll go into game state. Right here, we're actually creating our player in gamestate.h. Sorry, right here, gamestate.h. We're creating our player, right? And we're just gonna say player. Now we're gonna make that a pointer instead, because we're dynamically gonna allocate this memory. Also, we need to actually include player in game state in state.h. Yeah, right here. So it's gonna be player.h in state.h. Okay. Man, I'm just jumping all over the place. I'm sorry about that. I hope you can follow me on this. Okay. So we just included that in state.h instead of entity, because entity is included in player, right? So no worries. And then we loaded the texture. Now pretty much all I want to do now. Okay, all I want to do now, remember, this is a pointer now. So we're going to have to create it dynamically. And for that, we're going to create a void init players. Okay, since we might have more players. Define that. Always good to have initializer functions. Game state, init player. So this is where we're going to create the new player. And this is where we're going to delete. We're going to delete them. Delete this player. Don't forget to do that. Always do that. And to init the player, we're going to say this player equals new player. And then we're just going to say 0, 0, and then the texture itself. This texture at this position. And we're just going to give the address to that texture. So here you go. So we created a new player. We delete the player. And now we need to actually call these. So init textures, this init players in game state. So that's good. Now we need to change all of these to this trash, this player update, and this player render. Okay, pretty much. So let's just see if this runs. And let's fix all the issues before we end the video. So I'm really sorry about just jumping around, being fast maybe, but try to follow through. I'm pretty sure you can do that, and you should be fine. So let's just see. Okay, so all right, I did find the problem, a very, very simple problem. Sorry about that. Well, I just forgot to create the damn sprite for some reason. This sprite equals new SF sprite, and then we just use the actual texture here in that constructor. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so pretty much now it should work. Now we do have this going here. So if I run this, hopefully it should work now. And then we have a little player moving around. Okay, so we got the texture moving. Texture on the sprite looks real nice. I did come up with another thing. What we could do is just put that right there. So at that position, I'll load from file, and I'll just remove all of that actually, and run this. Just see last thing, final thing. Okay, that did work. Okay, so that's what we want to do. So it's a very nice way to load this texture. Obviously, what you want to do as well is make a little if statement here, right there, and then just or just throw. If not, obviously, if it doesn't load, throw error game state could not load player texture, something like that, and just throw that, make sure it exits, and there you go. So there you go, perfect. Player idle texture. Okay, now finally I'm done. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Hope you learned something. Sorry for being really fast jumping around. Promise to try to be a little slower in the coming videos. There's just so much shit to go through, so sometimes I get a little fast. But thank you. Keep working hard. Check out the description box. And I'll see you guys and girls in the next one, alright? Bye-bye.